An honor to be back up here and being able to preach to you all this morning and filling Gus's shoes for one Sunday morning, or at least trying to anyway. Gus is the opposite of a procrastinator, whatever term you want to use for that person. But he gave me 3 months notice to prepare. I pretty much used most of those 3 months to get up until just this past week to get ready. And by doing that, realizing that sometimes he has 2, 3, 4, 5 days to prepare his sermons, on top of all of his hospital visits and a funeral here and a wedding there, and all of his other responsibilities as a preacher of this church. It really is remarkable what all he does for this church and this community. And I know he texted me this morning, and I know he's serving in a church right now somewhere in Florida. So don't feel sorry for him that he's gone. When he gets back, I just ask that we all encourage him and let him know how much we truly appreciate all he does for this church, this place. And if there's anything that I can do, to serve here, whether it be on the board as a trustee or a member of the mission team, or come up here and preach on Sunday mornings, happy to do it, just because of the influence that this place has had on me. And we're gonna talk about influence for a little bit this morning. And you may have seen the bulletin or heard what the title of this morning's sermon is. It's the amazing leader that Jesus was. And the reason I say we're going to talk about influence is because someone who knows a little bit about leadership once said that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. John Maxwell said that. For those of you who don't know who John Maxwell is, he's one of the most influential, popular people in our society, really, quite frankly, our world today, when it comes to speaking and teaching on leadership. And he says that leadership is influence. And I think back on all the people that have influenced my life. And I get influenced by people every day. Some good, some not so good. But I think back on the people that have truly influenced me in such a way that it drives the way that I live my life. And I think of my family. I think of coaches and teachers that I've had. I think of this place, this church. And I don't know if you guys know who the leadership of this church is, but I can assure you that this church is in great hands when it comes to leadership, starting right on top with our 3 elders and on down the line. I'll give you a little more recent example of someone having an influence on somebody, someone having an influence on us. And when I say us, I'm talking about my immediate family. I won't go into more detail than that, but it's these two right here. Chip and Joanna Gaines, the fixer-upper people. It's amazing to me that as soon as fixer-upper came onto the TV, onto the scenes, right, things in our house suddenly started to disappear. Decor at our house suddenly started to disappear and were replaced by a Chip or Joanna-inspired thing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we even have shiplap in our house now. I included a picture of it in our PowerPoint here this morning just so you can see shiplap. I mean, heaven forbid, you know, drywall. You can't have painted drywall anymore. We gotta have shiplap, according to Joanna. But I mean, I blame myself for this because I'm the one that kind of planned the trip, I guess. But they influenced us in such a way that we even traveled and planned a mini vacation, a long weekend vacation, just to go down to their store and shop there, some 1,100 miles away, just to go shop at their store. And these two weren't even there. We didn't even get to meet them. I mean, I wanted to at least give Chip a fist bump or talk construction or something, but they weren't even there. You know, it was funny. I had to call the credit card company to call and tell them we were traveling out of state, right? Because all the credit card stuff these days, and let them know that you're going out of state, or else they'll shut your credit card off. And in hindsight, I probably should not have called, so they would have shut our credit card off, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? But I called there, and the lady, she asked me, my information, who are you? And then she asked me, where are you going? And I said, Waco, Texas. And she said, oh, you're going to Magnolia Market. I said, holy cow, does everyone go to this place? I mean, it's crazy. So we get down there, and my sister and my brother-in-law, Tom, and Tom being the common sense farm boy that he is, I don't get why they call it the silos. And Megan, of course, well, Joanne had a great idea. There's 2 big silos. Tom says, Megan, those aren't silos, those are grain bins. So we called it the grain bins the rest of the weekend. But
I mean, they even, I don't know if they do anymore, but they had a contest to see whoever traveled the furthest to get there that week or that weekend, they'd get a gift card or something. I thought we had that in the bag, but we didn't even win that. 1,100 miles, and we didn't even, there was some couple that came down from Nantucket or the North Pole or something. I don't know. It was, I can't make this up. And the influence, the leadership that those two have had on the home design, the home renovation, the interior design industry just in the last couple of years. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen Joanna's personal testimony online. There's a video you can watch, or if you've seen their more recent I Am Second videos they did together. But after seeing those, and after watching their loving personalities on TV, I'm a little more accepting of the fact that I might come home any given day and find another Joanna-inspired thing in our home. Because those two people, they follow the same leader that me and my family follows, and that's Jesus. And it's amazing to me that this man that hasn't been here now for some 2,000 years, and yet he still directly influences my little life on a daily basis. That's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. And you ask John Maxwell who the greatest leader of all time was, and he'll quickly tell you without hesitation it was Jesus Christ, based off sheer influence. I mean, Jesus made himself public and taught for 3 years. And today, some 2 millenniums later, there are 2.2 billion people that say they are or define themselves as Christians or Christ followers. That's amazing. That's amazing to me. John sometimes teaches on what he calls the 5 levels of leadership. And he teaches mostly to businesses and organizations, the corporate world. But I'd like to this morning, if you allow me, to apply these 5 levels to Jesus. To explain to you guys what an amazing leader he was. But also, I pray that maybe you can apply these to your own life too. That we can influence others more strongly. So there's 5 levels. Level 1 is what John calls the position level. You hold a title. You're a manager. You're a supervisor. You're a boss at work, and therefore you have followers because just sheer based off of a position or title. I can put coaches maybe or teachers into this category because they're students or they're players. If they want to be successful in the field, in the classroom, they have to listen to their coaches or teachers. I'll even throw parents into this category of position leaders because us kids, you kids out there, we gotta honor our father and mother, and sometimes honoring them means doing exactly what they tell us to do. I'm looking at the teens over there when I say that. But anyway, but no, when Jesus in his ministry, he was often called by his disciples, by his followers, by people that knew him as rabbi. They call him rabbi, being a Jewish religious leader. And even though he was not officially ordained or officially accepted or approved or voted on into the Jewish leadership, he was called rabbi just because of the way he taught and the way that his ministry created such a large movement. He was called rabbi. But I tell you, if you're any kind of leader at all, and if you want to influence people in any way, you're going to quickly want to get to level 2. Because at level 1, you'll find that your followers give the least amount of effort possible because they listen to you because they have to. They gotta bring a paycheck home, and they gotta provide for their family, or they themselves want to climb up that level of position in that given business or organization, so they have to listen to their position leaders. So level 2. Here's where that starts to change a little bit. John calls this the permission or the relationship level. Level 2. Tom. And anyway, so he calls that the position or relationship level. And this is where the leaders start to actually develop a relationship with their followers, so much so that they actually begin to like them. Not so much so they have to follow them anymore, but now they're moving to the point where they actually want to follow them. How many of us have been to a Chick-fil-A restaurant before? Chick-fil-A. I love that place. Not only do I love their food, but I love the way that they're willing and strong enough to share their faith on current social issues. But if you've ever been to a Chick-fil-A, if you dare to go to a Chick-fil-A during lunch hour, you'll quickly find, at least the ones I've been to anyway, the drive-through line will wrap itself around the building. And I've seen them do this. They send workers out to your car and take your order face to face, so you don't have to wait longer than you have to get to the intercom. And my brother and I were eating at one not too long ago off Polaris Parkway there in Polaris, and we were eating inside, and we just finished our meal. And this lady, this worker, comes up to us. She says, "Hey, how was your meal? Can I take your trash away for you? Can I get you a refill?" I mean, I thank goodness I wasn't chewing on a piece of chicken because I probably would have choked, because this is a fast food restaurant, and they're coming up to us and asking us take our trash away, asking us for a refill. Now, I don't know what she's implying by this, but she even offered us a mint on the way out, But the service there, and you could tell that the people there, they don't do that because they have to. They do it because they actually want to. They want to serve. And Jesus, when he was teaching his disciples a lesson on humility or servanthood, they were on their way to Jerusalem. In Mark chapter 10, they were on their way to Jerusalem, and he said, I have to go to this place, and I have to be arrested, and they're going to put me to death, but I'm going to rise on the third day. And after hearing that, James and John, the brothers, they were kind of position seekers. They wanted a place of authority, and they said, Jesus, when that time comes, if you allow us to, let us sit one at your right hand, one at your left, when you're on your throne in heaven. And Jesus said, well, first of all, James and John, that's not my request to grant. That's up to God. But he went on to say, he says, but you've seen how power and people seeking authority and people seeking positions, how that gets to their minds. And he says, that shall not be so with you. He said, no, if you want to have authority, you got to become a slave. You got to become a servant, he said. And he went on to say, he said, even I, Jesus, the Son of Man, have not come to be served, but to serve. This morning, the scripture reading that Raymond read to us, thanks, Raymond, for that. It's always fascinated me. It's always amazed. It's always challenged me because I think about this. I've tried to put myself in Simon and Andrew's shoes, and having this guy come up to us and say, "Hey, please come follow me." And just like Mark, the Gospel of Mark always says, he says immediately they stopped what they were doing and they followed him. And I can't help to think that these guys, they didn't do it because they had to. They did it because they wanted to. They wanted to follow a servant leader. If you're a person that likes to see things get done or see things get accomplished, you're going to like leadership level number 3, because John calls this the production level. Okay, where you as a person, you start to produce, you start to be productive, you start to contribute to the company's bottom line, or you start just to be accomplishing things, right? And people, the saying goes, people do what people see. Okay? So when they see that production, they themselves want to try and emulate that so they themselves become productive. It's just this whole leading by example thing. So if Jesus said that, I'm sorry, I got to get back to this real quick. I knew I'd struggle with that one. This whole leading by example. Oh, that's right. I had a guy, a teammate of mine in high school, right? And for those of you who know him, you'll know who it is once I start telling the story. But he didn't say 2 words when you talk to him. He just didn't speak. I even went to college with him when I was a freshman, and we spent a whole year together. He'd go a week without saying a word. It's like I had an imaginary friend or something. I'd talk and they wouldn't talk back. But it just wasn't. If Coach Boff knows what I'm talking about. It just wasn't his thing. But this guy that didn't talk, he was labeled as a captain by his teammates. And you think, how in the world a guy that doesn't speak, how does he get labeled a leader? Well, if you would have saw his way he produced on the football field, the way he produced in the weight room, the techniques that he used, and how he was so successful, not only did it influence his teammates so much, they voted him as captain, but they also, I guarantee you, were better football players themselves because they saw what he did and they tried to emulate that. They tried to copy that. And when you get a leader that produces, and therefore people will see that or are influenced by it, and they themselves produce, the snowball effect starts to happen, and this thing called momentum is created. And momentum's a powerful thing. A couple of my buddies and me got together yesterday and watched a little bit of March Madness. And probably in basketball, more than any other sport, you see momentum. You see momentum swings. When one team gets it, they start making shot after shot, probably ordinarily they wouldn't make, or they start getting an added shot of adrenaline because the crowd gets into it for them. Some can even argue that the officiating calls go the way with the team with momentum. And if the other team's coach is any kind of coach at all, what will he do? He'll call a timeout, right? Because he knows the power behind that momentum. He knows he has to get it stopped before things get out of hand. Momentum's a powerful thing. So much can be accomplished with momentum, but more so, and what I want to emphasize this morning is that with momentum, problems can be easily solved. Problems can be easily solved. John Maxwell, when he was talking about this in one of his speeches he was giving, he said, visualize a huge train barreling its way down the tracks, a big locomotive barreling its way down the tracks at full speed, and comes in contact with a problem. There's a big, thick concrete wall blocking the tracks. But with that train's momentum, it blows right through that wall and keeps right on going because it had momentum. Now, he said you take that same train and you put it stopped, dead still in the tracks, not moving. You put a little small 1-inch block in front of the driving wheel, and that same train can't even get going because it has no momentum. And I can't help, when I was thinking about that and listening to that, I couldn't help but apply it to our faith. When my faith has no momentum, when I'm not exercising my faith, when I'm not coming to church and being engaged and equipping myself here, when I'm not studying God's Word or spending time with Him in prayer, there's a gap between me and God, and that gap's called sin. And without momentum, that gap starts to increase. More problems, more temptations, more sin comes in. And not only do I have no momentum, I tend to decline. But with momentum, when I'm exercising my faith, that gap starts to decrease. And those same problems that come at me, or same temptations that come at me before that were road barriers, are now just small speed bumps or little bitty rumble strips because I have momentum. Jesus in His ministry developed such a momentum so quickly. Gus talked about this last week, that these huge crowds came out to see Him. So much so that the Gospel, Mark says that he had to get into a boat oftentimes. Give me a boat, or else this crowd's going to come around me and crush me. It's so massive. But the way he taught, the way he was a servant leader, the way he was a productive leader, that started to speed things up. People gained momentum from it, and so much so that these high priests caught wind of it and knew that it was powerful, and they had to get it stopped. They had to call a timeout. So they said, let's get rid of the situation. Let's execute this guy. And little did they know that by doing that, he would even conquer death. And this momentum would carry over some 2,000 years later. Level number 4 is what John calls the people development level. Kind of explains itself. This is where the leaders develop people. Okay? And at this level, leaders do a few things very well. They position well. They recruit well. Okay, they position well, and they equip well. I can't help but think about recruiting. Think about Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Ohio State, in their terms, were not on a very good place before Meyer got there, but he came in, and the way that he was able to recruit, bring that top talent in and put it on the field and see success so quickly because he got the right guys first. Lou Holtz was a longtime football coach, retired now. Lou Holtz said, I've had a lot of good players and a lot of bad players over the course of my career. I can tell you I'm a lot better coach with good players. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense. The way that Jesus was able to recruit people, and it probably made no sense to people at the time, even reading Scripture, what Raymond read to us this morning, he went and he handpicked these men, ordinary men. At the time, people were saying, why is he doing this ordinary men? These sinners even, tax collectors, going out and recruiting them. But Jesus knew these ordinary men were going to do extraordinary things for him. I love how he was even a little bit of a salesman. He said, you fishermen, I'm going to make you fishers of men. He applied that directly to their lives. That's what he'd tell probably Mark Bretz if he was trying to tell him to come here. He'd come, you're fishermen, fishers of men. Level 4 leaders, they position well. Nothing bothers me more sometimes than to see someone out of position. You see it in sports. You see it in business. You see it in life where people aren't successful because they're not positioned well. Okay, they can't put their talents on full display. They can't reach their utmost potential. But just with a little position change here or there, those talents can be put on full display. The way that Jesus positioned people, first his disciples, each one in their own position. Could you imagine if he had positioned Judas, how he positioned Peter? If he would have said to Judas what he told Peter, that you are Judas, and on this rock I will build my church, only to find out some short time later that Judas would go on to betray him. The church would not have fared so well. But Jesus knew to put Peter in that position. One of my, I think, was Jesus' greatest position moves was when after he had descended onto heaven, he'd been killed, right? And he rose on the third day, and he spent some time with his disciples, but then he rose and ascended into heaven. And the Bible says there's a man going about ravaging the church. So much so that he would go to people's Christians' houses, pull them from their homes, and throw them in prison. He was approving of people's Christians' executions, it said. But Jesus, from a throne high position, this guy, he said he's on this way to Damascus. He struck this guy down. He said, get up. I'm going to use you. Go on your way, but I'm going to use you. And he went on to say later, Jesus did, that this man's going to be my instrument. And for those of us, you know, the Apostle Paul went on to be one of the greatest evangelists in human history. Jesus knew how to position. He knew the power behind, and we see this today. People that are living on a life full of sin, they're on a highway to hell, but all of a sudden they come into contact with Jesus, and they start to decide to follow him and change from the inside out. People see that. They can tell their story just like the Apostle Paul did and change lives. People say, that person can do it, surely I can too. Jesus knew that powerful position that was for people. The third thing level 4 leaders do very well is equip people. They train them well. The philosophy is you do something, right? And then you do it again with someone watching you. And then you have them do it, and you watch them do it. You kind of coach them through it. And then they do it by themselves to get confident with it. And last but not least, the most important thing is they do it again with somebody else watching them. And that chain just keeps on rolling. That train rolls right down the tracks. It just repeats itself. That's how people are equipped. That's how they're trained. The way that Jesus equipped his disciples for ministry. For 3 years, they saw him act the way he acted, taught the way he taught, healed the way he healed, and he equipped them with that. And he knew the last and most important part of that whole message of those 3 years was right before he descended into heaven. He said what? He said, now you go. You go everywhere, he said, and you tell the good news of my words to everyone, and those who hear it and accept it will be baptized, and they'll be saved. He equipped them perfectly. The fifth level of leadership is called the pinnacle level. For obvious reasons, it's the height of leadership. Where these level 5 leaders, they've been so productive, so influential. They've influenced so many people along the way. They've developed so many people that they have the utmost respect as leaders. By what their followers know that by what these people have done, they will do almost anything for them. And that kind of sounds like Jesus to me. His disciples going and willing to die for his message. A lot of them did. A lot of them did. You know, what amazes me most about Jesus, I think, as a leader, is aside from the fact that he climbed those 5 levels so quickly, and aside from the fact that he died for our sins, that in itself is remarkable, right? But what it was his words and how he taught and how he lived went hand in hand. He was a man of integrity. Jesus was a man of integrity. He did what he said, and he said what he did. I think when Jesus was being questioned by Pontius Pilate, right before he was sentenced to death, and Pontius Pilate said, "So you are a king then?" And Jesus said, "Yeah." He said, "But my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world." And after hearing that, it makes so much sense now, because during his ministry, his teachings did not make much earthly sense to people at the time, because his kingdom was not of this world. He said, Jesus said that if you have hatred towards somebody, if you have anger towards someone, you're committing murder with them in your heart, and you'll be judged accordingly. If you look at another man or another woman with lustful intent, and they're not your husband or wife, you committed adultery with that person in your heart, and you'll be judged accordingly, he says. Or one that's very, very popular in our society today, or not so popular, he says to love your enemies and to pray for them, give them what they need, to forgive others lest you not be forgiven, to not trade evil for evil. How often do we hear people say, that person did so much to me, I can't begin to forgive them for what they did to me? Or how do we hear people say, that person did it, what can I do to get that person back? That is not what Jesus said to do. That is not what Jesus did. That's not what Jesus taught. And I guarantee you, if you put what Jesus taught into practice, live the way he lived, you will have a remarkable influence on someone's life, probably someone you don't even know. I have the utmost respect and admire the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty crew, these crazy guys. Not only do I love the fact that they're hunters and outdoorsmen, but I love the fact that they're willing and able to share the gospel with others and the platform they have to do it. I don't know if you guys know or not, though, that Phil Robertson was not a very nice person. the first half of his life. That's the guy in the middle there. And he was a bad person. So much so that Miss Kay and the two boys he had, he ran off on them. And when he finally hit rock bottom, he said, I got nowhere else to go. I might as well try this whole Jesus thing that Miss Kay and this preacher has been pushing on me and praying on me so hard about the last several years. And so he did. He came back and reunited with his family. He came back and accepted Jesus and was baptized, he says. And he went on and he said, you know what, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to accept this whole Jesus guy's way of living, I got to start living. I got to be good, is what he said. And he has this amazing story, and he can tell it a lot better than I could. So I'm going to have Tom play a quick video clip of Phil's story. And while I was playing, I'm going to ask the worship team to come up, and we'll prepare for the invitation.
See, you got rednecks, then you have river rats. So I'm reading over in Romans chapter 12, be good to your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, do not return evil for evil. The river rats tend to be far better thieves than your just local rednecks. You be good to them and don't return evil for evil. I was fishing for a living. It's my livelihood. I'm working my tail off. They're hungry, feed them. These river rats would steal my fish. I'd caught several of them before then. Usually I just come up, roar out there, come up with my shotgun and said, the next person who moves dies. They're stealing my fish here, Lord. They're hungry, feed them. And you want me to do what? Do not return evil for evil. Well, I have to see if that will work, but it makes no earthly sense, that's for sure. So one day I heard a motor slow down. These guys pull over to my float, and I'm watching them through the bushes. So I said, I'm going to be good to them, but I'm carrying my gun just in case. They're not good to me. And I'm going to do what the Lord said. I'm going to be good to them. So I roar up on them, and they're getting my net almost up in their boat, and they look up and they see this guy coming. That'd be me, wide open. I said, what were you boys doing with that net? They said, oh, is that what that was? I said, yeah, that'd be a hook net. It belongs to me. I said, here's the good news. I'm going to raise the net, and whatever's in there, I'm going to give them to you. And when I said that, they looked at each other and they said, they left me looking back, and all of a sudden up and down the river they quit stealing my fish. I just gave them what they were trying to steal. I took that to mean God was right all along. See, you got rednecks.
That's good,
then
Tom.
You have
Phil is a pretty cool guy. I like Phil. That was pretty powerful to me. It's simple, really, if you think about it. And I like to close this morning with showing you guys how someone living for Jesus can have an influence on someone else. We have a job site at work not too far from here. Ever since we started there, we've had problems with theft. When workers aren't there on the weekends and at night, people would come and trespass on the property and take building material, take workers' tools that these workers have worked so hard to accumulate over the course of their careers, just taken from them on a whim by someone who didn't deserve it. And you could imagine the animosity building up in all of us, and how we want to bring these people to justice, we want to get them back, how maybe we can even get them when the police aren't around, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And that anger spread, okay? And we got proactive about it. We wanted to get these guys, this is a secret, so don't tell anybody, but we went out and bought trail cameras you put in the woods to take pictures of deer with. We hid them throughout the job site. I'm not going to tell you where. But we hid them just hoping to get something of these guys. And it was a couple weeks later, I got a phone call. Said, Drew, we got some stuff stolen again. But you wouldn't believe we got pictures of them. We didn't get their license plate, but we got pictures of them. And we filed the police report for the upteen time, and gave them the pictures, hoping that they could do something. It's amazing how God works and gives you the opportunities to live for Him. I was on my way to the job site one day. I was 5 minutes from the job. I got a phone call. It said, Drew, you wouldn't believe this. I just got a call from the police, and they used our pictures. They got this guy. They got our thief. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. I said, what are they going to do, arrest me? He said, no, it gets better. They found the van, they found the material. They're making him bring it back to us. I said, you got it. He's like, no, it's going to be awesome. We're going to ridicule this guy. We're going to line all the workers up and let them know that he's lucky he's here with the police, not by himself. And when I heard that word ridicule, when I heard that speaking about retaliation, I immediately thought of Phil. I just taught that about Phil's story in the gathering just a couple weeks before that. And I thought of Jesus, and this sense of mercy came over me and grace. It was a weird feeling. And I got to the job, and sure enough, here comes this van. At first, I didn't see a police car. I'm like, well, these police are crazy sending this guy by himself. But there was some detectives that stepped out of an unmarked car behind him. All the workers lined up, arms folded, just wanting to look at this guy over. And he gets out, and we talk to the police, and he starts unloading this material. He put it right back where he took it a couple weeks prior to that. And again, this example of Phil came over me. Bailey Hayden, he's here this morning. Bailey works our jobs, one heck of a worker right there. He just jumps right in and starts helping this guy. I don't know if you knew, Bailey, that was the thief we were trying to catch, so you're helping out. But he was okay, Dad. Everything was safe. Everything was safe. But Bailey's example of helping, just this smile on his face, I couldn't help myself. I got up and started helping him too. Unloading the stuff that he took from us. And I got out, and the detective read him his rights or whatever, and they didn't take him in. He said, hey, we're going to call you. Make sure you stay by your phone. It's either going to be a felony or misdemeanor based on the value of material that you took. He said he understood that. But I still knew I needed to influence somehow. And so I stuck out my hand, and I shook his hand. And I looked him in the eye, and I said, my name's Drew. I want you to know that we forgive you. And he said he appreciated that. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But he got in his van and went off on his way. I asked the guys this past week, that was probably a month and a half, 2 months ago. I asked them this past week, has there been any theft problems since then? And they said, not since that day. And it could very well be that this was the guy that was doing the sole culprit, and he's not going to do it anymore because he got caught. But just like Phil, I'm going to give all the glory to the Almighty. I mean, we were just doing what Jesus told us to do, what he taught us to do, what he did himself. You realize that he was tried for and convicted for a crime he didn't commit, yet he knew he had to do it because he had to die for our sins. And they tortured him, and they beat him so badly to beyond belief, probably to beyond recognition. The beating alone probably would have killed him, but they had to humiliate him, so they stapled him to a cross. And as they were driving spikes through his hands and his feet, he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. That's amazing to me. What an amazing leader Jesus was. And I can even argue the fact what an amazing leader he is to this very day. And I ask you this morning, if you don't have a leader in your life like Jesus, if you've not decided that he will influence you in such a way that you will make every decision based off him, I ask you this morning to please choose Jesus. You will not regret it. You can come up, you can get baptized just like Jesus was and be well on your way to living a life for him. If you already have done that this morning, I challenge us all. I challenge you. I challenge us all to do this, to come here, to get equipped, then to go be servant leaders, so much so that you're an influence to somebody. And then bring yourself back, bring those people back that you've influenced, and we'll all get re-equipped together. We'll all get remotivated. And then, like Jesus said to his disciples, we're all going to go, and we're all going to share the good news that he brought, and people will be saved. I pray that we'll accept that challenge this morning. That's my prayer. Let's stand. Let's sing.